You are about to receive messages that may be harmful to your mental state. Your sense of reality will be questioned. Your view on things will be altered. You are now part of the meta. The meta controls everything. The meta determines what will and will not happen. You are watching The Meta Show.
And we're live! Indeed, and we got the background and everything. We are here. Yeah. Hello, boys and girls.
No, anything busted either, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't know if I've got a hole in my face or anything like that.
No, not today. No, you don't. I already fixed that.
Sweet, fantastic. I walk around all day with a hole in my face unless Boat retouches it. It'd just sort of be there. So we have a great show today coming up. We've got Aerith on board. We often have Aerith on board as a guest to try to explain the economy for us. Aerith, of course, is a representative on the Council of Stellar Management, as well as one of Goonsform's finance directors. And we'll be getting into this in a moment. But just the monthly economic report has been stunning. It came out. It's like no economic report we've ever seen yet. It's pretty crazy. And we're going to be talking about how to get rich, how we got rich, how you could potentially get rich, and how that's going to impact the galactic balance of power. So we'll be getting into that. Yeah. The other thing we're going to be talking about on our top story, after our top story in our Nullsec Power Hour other news territory, we have a couple of random things that have happened this week. We had Origin lost a Titan to Horde. We had somebody losing 100 injectors in a Titan when Jake Meister's account got hacked. Doom Chinchilla lost a Marshal to test, which is pretty funny. So
yeah,
PL losing a Marshal to test.
Apparently he forgot how the changes to the Marshal got changed and thought they were invincible and they died. Kind of like his Oracle.
And CCP, please, when we get there, we'll be talking about the chat bubble and skill point reimbursement. So the top story, of course, is going to be the monthly economic report. Let's give some people some shout outs. First of all, next week, I will not be here and we will not be having a meta show. We're going to be doing a Alliance FC tournament that Jay and Asher are going to be streaming. So that's going to be pretty exciting. So FanFest is going to be next weekend. There will be no meta show. And I believe right after the FanFest main broadcast finishes, we're going to be launching into the monthly FC tournament for exciting Imperium, crazy fun times.
That is going to actually be fun to watch. I have to play on one of the teams, and I'm excited for that.
One of the things that is neat about this for people who aren't in the know, the idea behind this tournament is we wanted to, and this is all Asher Elias's idea, so credit where it's due. I could have never come up with this. Asher came up with the idea that to actually train fleet commanders in a way that is useful on the field, we should get 50 on 50 fleets and bash them together in a tournament structure. So the members of the fleet might change. It's not a practice with your squad of 50 guys kind of thing. It's a way of training fleet commanders in real fleet combat levels of interactions instead of just like 5v5s or 7v7s. So it should be really interesting to see and should be a different kind of combat. And we're going to have other fleet commanders doing the commentating and analyzing and dissecting what happens, so you'll be able to understand the maneuvers that are taking place. So that'll be next weekend.
This is something I wish CCP would morph the Alliance tournament into. I know it's hard to do without a community dev team to run the Alliance tournament. But like, if they could make a 50 on 50 with really tight restrictions like we've pulled off, and if we pull it off really well, it'd be an amazing Alliance tournament. Like, you could just get so much more out of it that I can with 10 on 10. Plus, maybe they'd balance the game better, you know? Instead of balance it based on the Alliance tournament.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I think it would be really interesting to see. And, well, maybe we'll start it out and maybe they'll learn something from it. We'll just sort of have to see. But the first outing of this will be this upcoming Saturday. So
yeah,
should be cool.
I'm excited for it. Also, if you are going to FanFest and you're in the Imperium, there is a whole bunch of things going down at FanFest, and you need to see the link on goonfleet.com. I'll try to find a link for it here in a minute. Yeah. There's a dinner and a whole bunch of other stuff you need to sign up for. It's going to be pretty cool.
as usual, Goons and the Imperium are sort of doing their own thing because we're kind of skeptical about some of the FanFest festivities. I won't be there, unfortunately, this year. I'll be there next year. I'm going to go every other year, I think. But it looks like we're taking the pub crawl into our own hands. You can find all the details on the goonfleet.com thread. If you can't see goonfleet.com, this doesn't apply to you, so don't worry about it.
Yep, there's a link for all those that can't see it. Yeah. But dinner's up to 50.
The sub alert currently is behind the picture, Boat, so we can't see.
It is?
People are.
All right, hold on, I'll fix this.
Probably fix that. I was wondering why we weren't seeing anybody actually subscribe. You
can see it in the chat, but yeah, I'm trying to get the picture in a place where we can enjoy it, because
I think Bob you can Ross, have it be below the alerts.
Yeah, right there. Okay, Bob Ross, the boss, made a great painting, and it must be shown to the masses.
So shout-outs for people who were subscribing but maybe didn't get to see it. We've got Canadian. We've got Penguin Bacon for 19 months with Need More Graphs. We can always have more graphs. Ralos for 24 months. That's the big moment there, the 2-year sub. Thank you very much. That's awesome. Garrett77 with Twitch Prime. And let's see who else we got. I think so far it's been a quiet day for subs, but then again, we haven't heard worse about subs. And
Grandian77, thank you also. So yeah, we'll move into our top story, and while our guest is here. Real quick before that, I also going to be showing some Eve. We'll move the picture away in a little bit here, and there's a test server cap fight about to go down, so we're going to show what that looks like, and I have my character ready.
First Saturday of the month, we have the Imperium's Capital Training Op, and so we're going to get some eyeballs on that. Thank you, Boat. So yeah, top story. So this is basically, in many ways, Aerith, our guest, is responsible for the monthly economic reports being the way that they are in terms of what we're seeing in Delve. It's obviously not just him. He has had a lot of help from the logistics and the rest of the finance team. He is front and center on a lot of these issues. So it's sort of like hearing it from the horse's mouth. So Aerith, could you just sort of start us off and tell us what is different about this month's economic report compared to all the others that have said that, hey, Delve is a pretty rich region?
Well, obviously the big news on this one is our production has now surpassed the Forge. That is we believe, based on our internal math and the fact that we've had radio size of CCP on this, that it's probably because they finally included reactions. We don't believe they were including reactions before. We had brought it up with them a few times, and there had never been really a response. But our suspicion is they finally fixed that, which is why you saw such a sudden jump from 1 month to the next, where we're behind the Forge just fairly significant amount, a few trillion, and then bang, we're past them, by a huge margin. So that shows you the economic juggernaut that is our reaction farms that we've been exploiting since the November patch, where we had stockpiled all this goo, and now all of Goondom is busy churning out and printing tons and tons of ISK and manipulating JITA and driving up TG prices. And so you have this economic engine now that's really starting to go.
That's interesting. So if it's true that the difference is just there were errors in the previous monthly economic reports and that it would have been closer to this, what are the implications of that? That we've been...
There was a large part of our economy that was hidden. There still is. So I would say that the report still has errors. We know that there's errors. We're not quite sure how the error is happening, but we do know that at least in the mining value report that there's a problem. We did a specific thing in Quirius in the last 30 days in that last report that would have showed up had it been reporting correctly, which is not showing up really at all. So we know there's something wrong with certain calculations in the MER. But I brought it up, but they haven't said anything. I think a lot of that's with Quant's departure now. Recurve's taking it over, I guess, and I don't know how much time he has for it.
I was unaware that Quant departed the company. When did that happen?
Yes, we found out about it at the summit, I believe, and I don't know when his last day was, but it was within the last 30 for sure.
Okay, that's interesting. So, curious. So, what does this tell us? Okay, so here's the thing. If reactions were not part of the monthly economic report before, and let's just assume for a moment that there was an error, and suddenly reactions have been added back into that for the production. Have you seen a similar boost in production from other regions of the galaxy that would imply suddenly reactions are being accounted for?
The problem with the other regions is their signal to noise ratio is far less than ours, so they wouldn't necessarily, the reactions wouldn't necessarily pop to the extent ours was, because ours is so disproportionate to the rest of the galaxy.
Now, is that because everybody else is doing reactions at like an alliance level, or instead of trying to get as many people to do it as possible, or
more just even regardless of how they're doing it, the indexes show that they're doing it to a far less degree than we are in Delve. It's not even close.
So is this the kind of situation where so if people aren't doing reactions elsewhere in the game, what are they doing to make money at an alliance and organizational level?
Obviously, they're renting, even to their own corps in some cases, like Darkness. They are taxing moons at 30%. I'll use that as an example. So, what is the JITA value of this moon every month? I want that much from their players. So essentially, they're doing these kind of draconian, clinging to the old meta model taxation mechanics to try to keep that income level. But the bottom line is, no one in the game is making anywhere near the income we are, because they haven't adapted.
Okay, so
one thing I want to ask, and the image is on screen. Someone made this for me yesterday before my stream. This is a pie chart showing the 4 major blocks of EVE and the production values of all 4 major blocks. You have DRF, you have PanFam, you have Legacy, and then you have Goons. Is it really that skewed? Did all of the major blocks of 0-0 still can't even get half of what we're doing in production value?
Yeah, that's accurate.
Like, it's just this. So if you haven't seen this pie chart yet, Goons make up about 75% almost of all production in EVE 0-0. It's ridiculous.
Worse. The reaction graph, it was just reaction production, it would be far more skewed.
Yeah, I didn't even go that far. This was just a quick graph that someone made. But how is it that they, you have a group like, let's, for example, pull out DRF. 90% of their space is quiet. I mean, they lose the occasional super carrier because it's a bot to people hunt those things. But nobody invades the DRF. Nobody goes up into northern Cobalt Edge and fucks with that. How can they not pull in the kind of money that one region can with 12 regions?
Because they're maximizing the value of even one region, and they're renting, right? Rental models don't get a lot of value out of regions. Like, it sounds like it did in the old way. Right. And in the old meta, they were the best way to extract value from region. But now they're very inefficient, and you're far better off holding one really good region and just shit stomping anyone that comes into it.
Is there some sort of like a farming? Of course, I don't have any training in agriculture, but it sounds almost as if there's a metaphor here involving increasing your crop yields. Like you have, in this case, Delve is one sort of plot of space land, and we've done a lot of effort to fertilize that land and really utilize it as fully as we possibly can, as opposed to in a rental system where you basically are taking some random seeds and sprinkling them out in a field and then walking away from it and just hoping that shit grows.
I got one for you. Urban farming. People that take like a quarter acre and make like $100,000-$200,000 a year off that quarter acre, doing advanced farming techniques and like organic, high quality products, compared to a farmer maybe has 100 acres, he maybe breaks even.
Well, it's unfortunately for all these other noble alliances, it's far deeper than that. Like, for example, we are on phase 4 now. We've recently entered phase 4 on a 8-phase plan that I have to build up our empire. And it's taken us 2 years to get to phase 4. And there's capital investment required. There's tons of planning required. You have to get a lot of these variables just right. You're balancing 20 to 30 variables just the right way. And every region's different. So what you would do in Delve is not what you would do in Deck by far. What you would do in Deck is not what you do in KE, which, by the way, is a really good region, or what you do in Esoteria. So for whatever reason, and I think a lot of it is because we had years of prior planning in the economic team for us, and years of stockpiling and anticipating and figuring out all the moves we would do. So when the patch came, it was the system that we had hoped it would be, and the system that everyone had been talking about for 2 or 3 years, right? Farms and fields. So we were ready for it. And no one else was, even though they would lobby and say, yes, this is going to really screw those goons. It's like, no, actually it screws everyone but us or people like us because we're willing to use our space and no one else is. They just want to be like, hey, give me a check every month.
They don't want to do
all
the work.
Yeah,
they don't want to
right.
go through the effort.
Here's another thing that was I find rather interesting about this. One of the big things a couple years back by CCP at FanFest was we're pushing really hard, and this is even when I went to FanFest, to have 0-0 be self-sustaining, and you go out in 0-0, live there, and do really well. And there's been a slew of Reddit threads this week with the MER going, is this what CCP intended, for one group to dominate the game so hard with their little spot of land? Are they going to address this? Can they? I mean, there's really anything they could do about this without really fucking the rest of the game?
No, I mean, anything they do at this point. So there's two paths, right? They do something so draconian that it fucks everybody hard, and we lock in our tens of trillions wealth advantage that we've been able to generate in this short amount of time.
Right.
Or they do something that kind of fucks everybody, but just fucks everybody worse than us because we're better organized and we have more capital now. We're wealthier than anyone, and we plan better. We know this meta. Like, no one else has a finance team. We're the only ones that do. So whatever they do now is probably worse than just letting the meta finally play out, because you either are going to learn or you're going to die. And it seems like Test is starting to learn. Like, I'm looking at their economy a little bit. It does look like they might have critical mass soon. They don't yet, but they are adapting.
It looks like Test is at least trying. One of the things about this that strikes me as so odd is, we talked about this on the Meta Show. And we made no secret about our programs, and Goonswarm and the Imperium has lots of spies, so we didn't hide what we were doing. And long in advance of this, we said that this was going to be a massive economic disruption, and essentially, a arms race started in EVE Online, but we were the only people running. And it's an arms race for economic, which is then production and military power, because the previous sources of economic distortion, the casinos, all got banned. Right. But it's just really unusual to see, like, when there's a new fleet meta, oftentimes there is an arms race. Whenever there's a new type of ship, if it's actually useful, everybody rushes and trains to get there. You always want to get bigger, better, faster, more. Has there ever been a time that you've seen, Aerith, where CCP really changed something and only one alliance started running?
No, like, I've even been trying to explain this to people, is like, you've had 3 ages of EVE, right? You had the age of diplomacy with the Bio-Rad era. I'm sorry, I'm going to use our internal people's names just because, well, we're myopic. So you had the Bio-Rad era, where diplomacy really dictated the null meta. And then you kind of had the age of, like, the Vs, where the honorable space jousting captains dominated EVE. It was the military age of EVE. And then with, these mechanics, basically, essentially, Aegis Solve, now you have the economic era of EVE. And we're the only ones playing it. And we're the only ones that have been playing it for a couple years now. And we're leaving everyone in the dust. And either you are going to decide that you're going to play that at some level, or you're not, and you're just going to become irrelevant over time. The choices are Hostel's choice, but it's kind of sad because CCP's given us something really cool here if you're willing to put the time in, but it does require a lot of time. Like, yeah, it's my plan, but can you imagine how much time G-Soul's put in deploying all of these structures and ACLs and all these farms and pastures and moons? Like,
it's been thousands of hours of effort across the organization to implement some of this stuff.
So a question I have, though, and we talked about this 6 months ago, right before I went out. This was probably October. We had Vince Straken on before the patch hit. We had a couple other big alliance leaders, and I think as Captain Patrick Archer was here to talk about Tri, and we made fun of the fact that all these people warring in the South was going to lead to them being so vastly behind. And Vince Straken said, look, we're prepared. And it looks like NC has a lot of money, at least compared to the rest of their compadres there in the North. But besides NC Dot, I mean, is there really anyone else that has any money in EVE? I mean, looking at Darkness, for example, and the Big Bill, the boss, made a great post about this. They're crumbling financially, day after day after day, where they can barely afford anything. So how does this look for everyone else?
How do we tell? I mean, that's an interesting question to boat, which is, how do we tell, looking at an NC Dot or a Darkness, are there indicators that you can see, Aerith, as to who actually has money versus who is just floating on savings from the casino era?
Oh, for sure. Like, we get the best way is intelligence. Like, the Black Hand has excellent coverage, and we'll see when hostiles are cutting SRP programs, like maybe NC Dot did recently.
Right.
We also can easily track their metrics. Like, we have an internal site for the Cabal that tracks, like, you know, all the routing metrics for the entire galaxy, every day for months on end. So we can actually see the projected income from those sources. We know the projected income from certain PI sources. The mining is presented by CCP itself. Even the ratting, to some degree, is presented by CCP itself. So you're able to see all of the steps of their economy, and so you know roughly what their expenses are going to be, because you can extrapolate based on what you know the mechanics dictate, right? How much SRP are they paying? How much are they paying for SOV? How much are they paying for fuel? That kind of thing. So we know, even NC Dot, they're not rich. We're the only ones probably in the game that are, and I personally don't feel we're rich enough. But compared to others, we're golden gods. Like, if you're a test right now and you take a 2 trillion-ish wealth, you're fucked. If you're Horde and you take even a 1 trillion-ish wealth, you're totally screwed. And so that can knock you out of a fight for 30, 60, 90 days where you're not combat capable if you actually want to SRP.
That brings up an interesting question.
Yeah.
So back in the day, many of these alliances, which are the sort of classic elite PvP alliances like NC Dot and PL, you could, as an independent player, just rat enough ISK to be able to replace your ships. And the assumption in entities like PL was, well, if you're good enough to be in PL, then we assume that you're rich enough to be able to replace your stuff, so we don't need to do SRP. Eventually, they added on some kind of an SRP program, but it was never really, there was this attitude that an individual could just go out there and bust their ass and make enough to have their own fleet ships. What's curious to me about this economic change is that essentially the prices of those same ships are increasing so much because these alliances that are not doing this work are not contributing to the supply of the T2 baskets, right? So if everybody in the galaxy was playing the game the way that Goonswarm and the Imperium is currently playing the game, there would be a lot more supply of T2 materials, which means that there would be a lot less disruption at the level of the T2 market for the cost of buying, say, a hack. But the way that it's working right now, we're the only ones, and Test is starting to do it, producing at this scale of these supplies, the inputs that go into T2. So you know, what used to work in the day for plexing your account and running, is it possible to make enough in EVE if you're just ratting and hoping as a line member?
There is, but the problem, it goes way beyond that. So think of it a different way. We in Delve are going to be predominantly controlling all the Moongoo in the world, and because I just control Jita right now. For all Moongoo, I've been controlling Jita for months. We do it with our internal moons. Most of it doesn't leave Delve. So we are reaping the profit on that goo. We are reaping the profit on the advanced materials made out of the goo. We are reaping the profit on the ships themselves built in Delve, and then all our members reap all that profit all the way up that chain when the hostiles buy our T2 ships. So that entire chain is ours. And so all you're doing when you're buying up these really expensive T2 ships, which by the way are only going to go up more in price, from us is contributing to our wallet while depleting your own. And pro tip for anyone listening for economic, advice, I'm going to jack those R64s much, much higher than they are now.
Yeah,
I'm thinking, let's go for 200.
I'm going to share an example. We had a Goon hero this week by the name of Kunmi, and a great example of how he extends that to the market is Darkness just changed recently to an Eagle Doctrine, and every single ship they bought in Jita, or Sword Dragon himself, was bought from Kunmi, was bought from a Goon. Every ship. He even showed a picture of all the ships they bought, how much extra they paid. It was ridiculous, right? And you look at the monthly economic report, and someone pointed this out to me yesterday. If you just took production into Titans, right? If you took all of our production for last month, put it into the number of Titans built, 950 Titans could have been built just on production value, which is absolutely ridiculous when you look at that. Another thing to look at, too, is you point out that the production is not leaving Delve. It's in-house. If you look at exports, imports on the monthly economic report, Delve is one of the smallest import exports of all of EVE. You have a lot of groups like Veil the Silent who are hitting the trillions of ISK and exports to JITA. They take all of their rental money, all their money they make, and they send it right to JITA to try to make a buck. But in Delve, it's re-put into Delve.
We have pretty big imports, but like,
right.
What is the difference? I think we've got pretty big imports. We
Not
just
exports,
don't export
right?
Things.
That's
No, it's 80. We're an 80% export economy by M3. I'm not talking ISK, but by M3, 80% of our economy is export, not import.
Interesting. What does that mean?
We're very lopsided when it comes to shipping. So we're building things that have small inputs. For example, one of the things that really contributed to that was CCP made a mineral goo size change. So for all raw moon goo, they drastically reduced the size of it. Well, but they didn't do that on the output. So when you make ferrogel, it's still big and fat. When you're getting dysprosium to Delve, it's really tiny. So you can ship a jump freighter worth of R64s, hundreds of billions of ISK into Delve in one go, in one jump freighter, but that ferrogel going out is going to be like 30. It's that kind of disparity. So that's a big contributor of it. A lot of that signal to noise is washed out just because the jump freighters going back and forth too. They kind of wash out, but so we're 80-20 there, but it goes even a step beyond that in the sense that we're controlling so much of the supply. No one else has the ability to really get in the market easily at scale because we're doing area denial across the entire T2 market.
So that's something that potentially members of the Imperium could get involved in. And if you're not a member of the Imperium, I'm sorry, because this is going to make life worse for you.
Right.
But one of the things that Aerith just talked about openly was that we are crushing JITA, and what that actually means is having enough control of the supply and organized manipulation practices to artificially raise the price of various components of these T2 baskets to basically just extract even more profit and value. So Aerith, if you could give advice to goons and allies who are watching the show and hearing about the fact that we're going to continue doing bad things to JITA, how would an Imperium line member, this is like an infomercial, how would an Imperium line member find out a way to make it rich using your system?
So it's very simple. You need to be in GS-ISK Jabbers, GS_ISK Jabber on GoFleet Jabber. I telegraph all my moves in that channel ahead of time, and I tell people, I'm going to hit this, your input price is going to go up, buy your stuff now, and then when I hit and manipulate that thing, by the time your inputs have been converted to outputs, you're cashing out into huge, like 30% profits every 2 weeks, every 30 days, like as fast as you can churn. So we've made trillions and trillions, tens of trillions at this point, because I've made trillions and trillions, of ISK for people in that channel since the patch, with just reactions and telegraphing my manipulations. Like Thulium was the latest. It was the last to go. I said, hey, everyone, I'm going to hit it in a certain date. We've been buying up until that date. Mina came back last minute and actually got sold off some of the stockpile really cheaply. And I hit it the same day for millions and millions of units, clearing out a lot of the stockpiles. And now Thulium's spiking. It's going to run real high. It's going to pass 100K easy. So you automatically make money if you're a little guy and you've bought up all this goo and you've reacted it. All of a sudden, all that goo you bought up is worth a whole lot more. And the output spikes right into your really overpriced sell, just like I'm doing in Ferrogel and Fermana condensates. Like, I'm doing this personally. The Alliance is doing it at scale. Our allies are doing it at scale. And all of Gundam's doing it at scale. So if you're not GS-ISK, then you're retarded.
Okay,
this reminds me of something.
Just cut a couple questions to chat about this. What you're seeing on screen right now on the EVE client, that's the Sissy Capital training out with goons. Looks like the situation is Rorquals are mining, they get dread bombed, and someone's got to save them. So that's what you're seeing right now. If you're wondering,
it is a Rorqual defense training off.
Right.
We do them first Saturday of every month. So here's a question.
Yep.
One of the first major economic manipulations, and there obviously were many others, but this was one of the first big, very public alliance level organized ones in Goonswarm's history, was the original guidance system manipulation. And I got involved in that, and I think Aerith was the leader, if not the leader, but one of the leaders at that. I forget. But essentially what happened was CCP was going to change an aspect of the game. Our finance people figured out that there was an opportunity to buy guidance systems en masse at 418 per unit. And I don't know what guidance systems are at these days.
100,000 plus.
Right. So essentially,
yeah.
You could buy something for 418 ISK, and then later, after waiting a couple of years, because we think long term, wait a couple of years and then sell it for just an insane profit. And it just occurred to me, listening to you describe what you're doing with manipulating the market in JITA, it seems almost as if you are creating these market distortions to like make guidance systems over and over again.
That is essentially what I'm doing, yeah. So, yeah, I was the one that did guidance system. We all told everyone to go into PI, but I was the big guidance system proponent because I felt like, who cares how quick we can cash out as long as we go for maximum return? So I had like 35 million guidance systems at my peak. I've sold off like half at this point. I still have like almost 2 trillion worth or something, something dumb. But it's functionally the same. What we do is we try to spot things that either we know are going to go up in value, which in this case, some of this is all CCP mechanics based on the way Moongoo works and is harvested now. So we knew it's kind of a sure thing. We don't know how big of a sure thing. I have some gut feelings, and I've done a lot of probes, and I think I know where the market's going, and it's going way higher than it is now. So it's a very safe thing. I just have to take all the risk with my personal risk. So what I do is I lead the tip of the spear. The whole manipulation is me, and everyone just follows in my wake. I say, hey, I'm going here. You stay away from this one over here because I'm going to be there, cashing out. But over here, I'm cashing in. So everyone just rides my waves and makes tons of money in my wake. And all the puppies get horrified and screwed and have to flee because they don't know what's what. They don't know, is this an item I should stay away from or I should get in? And so I crush them when I see them. And I'll crush items and make them unprofitable and then buy up their stock and bring it back. And they have no way to fight against that because they have no stockpile. So my input price and Goon's input price hardly matters because it's far cheaper than a puppy will be.
Now, that's you go, but
question I have is, all right, say there's a Goon who may be new to EVE or played in the last year, and he joins Goons, but he's an economist in real life. Like, that's what he does. He makes money. Who could he talk to get into this? Guys that understand market theory and all these crazy...
We recruit from GSISC, so we haven't added a member to the Cabal in many years, but we're always looking for talent. The problem is we can't find any. All that talent seems to be significantly less talented than we noticed a few years ago. It seems like it seems like the new crop of people playing EVE don't have enough history with EVE and mechanic knowledge to be able to do it. But if you can learn, you need to be in GSISC and hope get spotted.
One of the things about the organization of the guidance systems process and why this reminds me of it is you had come up with a way with coordinating everybody who had a guidance system stockpile in an open thread on goonfleet.com. So essentially, you didn't actually need to learn all of the really complicated stuff about finance to profit immensely. I mean, I bought 2 billion ISK worth of guidance systems, which turned into a ridiculous number later.
I still have 1 million.
And you basically just have to sit there and follow the thread and bounce around. So you don't necessarily have to go like, oh god, I've got to like spend 1 million hours staring at a spreadsheet. It's just that the Goonswarm finance team says, hey guys, buy thulium at X price. Okay guys, stop now. And then, hey guys, here's a broadcast that says we're all selling. You just sort of follow along and make money. And the reason why we're talking about this openly and laying this out is I think that, first of all, we want to have more goons and allies making money. There's nothing saying that if you're not in Goonswarm, if you're a member of the Imperium, you can read the same threads and join GSISC just as well as Goonswarm members and profit as well. It multiplies the effect of the manipulation. The more of our guys we get involved, the more effective it is, the more money we all make. And also, I want to explicitly, I want to sow fear and panic amongst everybody who is not in the Imperium when it comes to the markets, because a panicked market results in people doing stupid things, artificially driving up the prices for things, which results in more profit and more opportunity for us. I mean, is that actually, that's an assumption on my part. Aerith, is that actually true? Should we be trying to scare the puppies by telling them openly what we're going to do?
I think there's no harm in it now. Like, I've considered writing a couple articles being like, here's how I'm owning you, because half the fun of owning everyone is knowing you're getting owned, right? And you're doing the owning. There's no one at this point. Like, people ask me what's the worst part about my gameplay style now, and it's that there's no one really to commiserate with. There's no one to share your accomplishments with anymore, because there's no one outside of the Cabal playing at this level. And even inside, we're all slowly kind of aging away.
Here's two things I want to ask. Well, I'll ask a question after I Pro something. One thing we've noticed, and maybe Aerith can comment on this, is in other alliances, CO2 is a really big example of this, where GigX ran everything, all the importation, all the money making, all the money. It was one leader who did it all. And if we look at Darkness, for example, it's two guys who do it all. You have Sword Dragon himself handles all the finances, and you have another guy who does all the import, export, and telling people how to make money and all that in a really horrible way. But is there anyone that has even a finance team out there that can make money? I mean, outside of Goons, is there anyone that even does that?
No, like there's no one that does it. Like there's a lot of what I call bottom feeders out there. Sorry, some of the people I know that you know who I'm talking about, but they may appear on this channel. They're reactionary. They're hoping for another player to screw up, or they're risk adverse, or they're just doing very low effort, marginal catfishing is what I call the bottom feeders. Like they don't matter. Like they're not shaping the meta. They're not deciding what the meta is. They're not leading grand manipulations. And like this is what we've been doing for years and years. And we do it at such a level now that it's essentially a sure thing, because by just us willing it with that much ISK, it occurs. And if we get it wrong, well, we can make the meta change with our membership by changing how null moons are attacked, or causing a shortage by reinforcing a ton back in the day. Like there were so many things you can do when you're also a power. And so one of the things I tried to explain to what was a sort of a finance team for CO2 back in the day was M. Marlin. We got into a discussion one time, and he was talking about how rich he was and whatever, and I was, humoring him, thinking, "Oh, that's so cute." I said, "What is wealth without power? Like, if you can have all the ISK and Eve, and if you don't have the power to make that ISK cause suffering, or make that ISK enhance your empire or something, what's the point?" And it turned out like he was embezzling from CO2 that whole time. I caught him, and he ended up getting shot for it. But it took us a year and a half to convince CO2 he was stealing from them, when I could just napkin math and prove it. Like, that's how bad the finance is in other orgs.
One of the things that I want to get in here for a second, one of the things that's interesting about this is I think a broader aspect of human behavior that we see in EVE is essentially risk versus reward. And people say risk versus reward, but what I really mean is the ratio of your efforts towards a goal versus the amount of reward you get for it. And I think that maybe one of the reasons why we haven't seen other organizations try to actually work in the system is that they think that the rewards are fixed. Like no matter how much work they do, they're only going to get a certain amount of reward for the effort. Or they think that the rewards that they're going to get from doing ratting and renting and these other systems are roughly equivalent. It just seems like there's not an understanding that in this new type of game, it's not new anymore because CCP came out with it, like 6 months ago, but that the reward scales with the effort. And in fact, in many ways, the reward scales beyond the effort. If you do a shitload of work, you get not rewarded for the shitload of work, but you're seeing this kind of like, it appears almost like a logarithmic effect of success. Is that, do you think people just don't know, Aerith, that there's this level of opportunity here?
I think this goes back to an argument you and I used to get in all the time, where I was always very paranoid. I didn't want to have a public persona. I didn't want to talk to the pubbies at a show, because I felt like it was teaching our hostiles how to beat us. But you always would say, you're making the assumption they're out there able to assimilate that level of knowledge and use it. And I've come around to your viewpoint. I think you're right, that they just are too dumb to do it. Like, there's not another evil overlord out there. They're just a bunch of, small-time players.
And that's another thing, too. I have to ask this, and this might sound like a dumb question, but say there is other hostiles out there that have the level of knowledge you do when it comes to real-life finances, do you think that they feel there's an effort? Like, are they, is it megalomaniac enough to want to get into EVE and just fuck everything up with their knowledge? Is there anyone, would it be worth their time? Like, guys that make $400,000 or $500,000 a year in the economic sector coming into EVE and going, oh, I could fuck this up. Is there anyone like that? I mean, there could be someone, I guess, but is there? Because you hear about the occasional, one guy that no one's ever heard of, and he posts his occasional screenshot of how he made his hundreds of trillions, and CCP always talks about the 4 or 5 guys that are unknown, that are like you, but they don't work for an organization, they work for themselves, and they just do it for fun, right? But why isn't there alliances that have guys like this?
I think it's a combination of a lot of years of knowledge, and then you also have to have somewhat of a benevolent, altruistic streak for a tribe, right? If you're just what we call them the evil, the evil finance people when we refer to them as, there's lots of guys within GSF over the years we've looked at and said, oh man, he might make a good finance director. And every time I look at him, I'm like, he's evil because of this, this, and this. And we look into the person and yeah, they're evil. Like they're too greedy. You can't trust them. They'll be corrupt, whatever. So you have to find someone you can trust that's really good and you can trust. That's almost impossible in the way trust works within EVE. Most people aren't tribal anymore. They just go to whatever the flavor of the month org is.
Yeah,
that's true.
One big example I look at for you mentioned evil is the Aluminum Tycoon guy who dropped hundreds of $1,000s in the game to then turn his wealth into real game wealth and then try to manipulate the game. And it just fell on his face because he had to rely on people who had no idea what to do with all that money, right? I just feel like there's this giant gap.
He also, the Aluminum Tycoon is an interesting example, and thank you for bringing that up in chat, guys. In that case, what he did was, that was, of course, Sir Lordex, S-E-R, L-O-R-D-E-X, way back in the day. Sir Lordex just spent like $50,000 on buying Plex. He didn't build up an economic engine in-game.
Yeah.
So in many ways, the best description of what Sir Lordex did with the economy was very similar to the Casino Barons during the Casino War, where they had this sort of artificial injection of ISK from a source outside of the gameplay, and it had a major impact, but then it also dissipated.
Just petered out, right?
Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't something that was actually generated as a product or a system. One of the things we're going to be doing here, guys, in about 3 minutes, is at the 45-minute mark on the Meta Show now, we go into Cool Kids Only mode. So we're going to hit subscribers on here.
Yeah,
in,
we're also
3 minutes.
We're also going to move on to our other news here in a moment, because there is some things that are interesting that are unbelievable interesting. Like, how the fuck does that happen kind of unbelievableness?
Let's do it.
Yeah, so we're going to click this button. All right, and our first story is the Marshall. The price of the Marshall has calmed down some. It's down to, I think, 12 billion is, not 27. But when people that originally bought this, the ship was viewed as a ship that could not die. The way it's designed, the way it's built, it should not die. But we found out, just like with his Rorqual that could not die, somebody found a way to lose it, and that was Doom Chinchilla lost a Marshall, valued at 28 billion ISK here. He bought one of the originals. It's quite amazing to lose it.
Can you explain for people who don't know what a Marshall is? What is a Marshall? What does it matter?
Marshall's a huge deal because it's a specifically designed battleship that was supposed to be released to only people who went to FanFest and Vegas or bought tickets to both. It's a Black Ops battleship, so it could take Black Ops bridges. It can cloak and do that kind of thing. It can also jump to Sinos. But at the same time, it's insanely strong. Like, it just gets away really well. It blows things up really well. I think it does like 1200 DPS, which for a Black Ops battleship is quite a lot. It can tank very well. It's got a ton of mids and low slots. Insanely powerful. We had a guy named Otto von Bismarck from NC who was using one in Delve, and it was never caught. Like, if you know what you're doing and you're competent, you're going to get away every time. Obviously, Doom Chinchilla is not that competent and lost his. So we get to see...
Did they change something? Did they change something about the Marshall?
They nerfed it somehow, but I don't remember how. Someone was trying to tell me this week, and I missed how they nerfed it. But I believe it was K-Color that pointed that they nerfed it right before he lost his. So I don't know what they nerfed. It made it harder to get away. Maybe they made it agility less or something. But it's just a really powerful ship for what it is.
Somebody is saying here in chat that it's also a ship from that they're adding to the Project Discovery.
Oh yeah, that's how they're gonna make it more common. Apparently, they said they were gonna make it more common, and that was another thing. It's just real expensive because of that. Says
level 500 for Project Discovery, as well as so according to
they nerfed the cost. Okay.
K-Color, excellent, thank you.
And then another thing that's kind of newsworthy. I say it's newsworthy because when everyone looks at this, they go, "Oh, he's RMT." And if he did get his account hacked, then it explains RMT purposes. Is Jake Meister, a very AFK...
Who is Jake Meister?
I don't... Do you remember who he is? Because I don't remember. I just saw this and went, oh, that's just some random idiot. That's just some random idiot in PL. Like, I never really thought of who that was. So, who is it? Go ahead and share it with us. Mittens, hello?
I was asking you or Aerith because I actually have no idea who he is.
But he's worth a lot of money, right? So apparently all his character got skill gooed, and then the guy killed himself in a safe spot. The way you RMT with this method is you go to a safe spot, you get yourself concorded, and then some random person loots the wreck, and if RNGesus is on your side, all the loot drops. The guy you're RMTing to takes the loot. He sends you his $1,000 or whatever. He takes the loot, turns it in for ISK, and that's how you RMT ISK. CCP, it's almost impossible to trace this because anybody can loot the wreck, and CCP is pretty common of if a wreck gets blown up, they won't reimburse you for anything that drops. So this happened to Jake Meister. He claims his account was hacked, but let's be honest here. When the guy's been AFK for like 2 years, according to PL, he's not really done anything. It would explain what he did here, and the first thing I thought was tried to RMT and failed miserably. First, he lost 85 billion in the form of ejectors. Then he tried it again with another Titan skill book for another 5 billion, and the Titan skill book dropped. So all in all, lost almost 100 billion ISK.
So as someone who's blown up trillions and trillions and trillions in freighters, he should have just separated all the stacks.
Yeah, we're not gonna get into why he's an idiot, but he's an idiot. And
did we actually give a proper shout out for Big Bill the Boss? I mean, we had his art in the background.
We had his art in the background, but we did not get into a shot. I linked his thread. If you want to go ahead and do that real quick.
Big Bill the Boss, of course, made this talking about the monthly economic report. It's been kind of a slow week in terms of shit blowing up in Nullsec, so we are kind of like poking fun at random explosions here. So a shout out to Big Bill the Boss, as Sadis called him. Big Boss Ross, or Boss Ross the Boss, I don't know, something like that. It was funnier when Sadis said it, but just a hilarious illustration of life outside of Delve and a stairway to heaven. So that was
he made even a great analytical post, which something Big Bill is known for doing. He tends to analyze things. He does stock trading in real life and makes money that way. So he analyzed the shit out of this. Yeah, he analyzed the shit out of this, and it's pretty horrible if you look at GOTG. Considering the place that they live, Branch is unassailable. Nobody's gonna fuck with you in Branch because who the fuck wants to live in Venal? For them to be making so little money is kind of ridiculous. Like, it's pretty sad. But, you know, that's the way it is when you're run by an idiot.
Before we get to our next like point and laugh episode, I just want to point out here that in addition to oh god, as JC Denton points out, the bad juice skeleton dab from that terrible video.
I'm not even going to talk about that. That's just that bad. That guy needs help, and we're not going to talk about it.
I will talk about it briefly.
Oh, go ahead,
you
please.
Don't have to say anything. But just so first of all, guys, it's subscribers only mode. It's not just like Cool Kids only. But if you guys have questions or comments or if there's something you want us to talk about, assuming you know it's reasonable, we will go into it. So feel free to put stuff there in chat. So the skeleton dab thing, a guy in Darkness posted a unironic morale video, just with all of the inspiring music and herf blurf and this just terrible dabbing skeleton intro and outro about killing an undefended small goon swarm tower. And it was just a video of fucking typhoons shooting a small posse, and like, wow, we totally beat the evil Goonie menace, and that has got to be one of the weakest and most cringeworthy morale videos.
No, it gets worse. They got worse as the week went on. That's why I didn't want to talk about him. They made 2 videos this week, Slice did, that are even far worse than that. One was a video of a guy taking his Aeon from
the skeleton dab was bad juice. I'm sorry, there's so many videos. I'm not sure whether the skeleton dab was with the fucking small posse or the skeleton dab was the guy who threatened Asher.
Out. Yeah. That was that one. That's why I didn't want to talk about
it.
That was the one that threatened Asher. That guy needs mental help. I didn't want to even give him attention. But the real bad one was a guy made a morale video with like bass music of him taking his Aeon from CCP to DO6H over a 10-minute like video. It was the worst thing I've ever seen, and he claimed that that's how safe Declan is because he's able to gate his Aeon at downtime when no one's paying attention, and he made a morale video for that. The second morale video was a guy showed 3 or 4 rorquals, super zoomed in so you wouldn't see where he was or what they were doing, of them mining, talking about how safe Declan is to mine in, and how they can't be touched. Oh, by the way, a day later, they lost 4 of them.
Wow.
So that's their 2 morale videos this week that top all the other morale videos. It's been so bad for propaganda that people are asking Tess to step in and make them propaganda because it's fucking
Tess
horrible.
is pretty good at it. We got a question here from Bardghost, and yeah, the tower that got blown up in the morale video was not one of the original ones from back when we lived up north. It was actually just a tower that I think had been thrown down by one of the Imperium's SIGs or squads that may or may not have a name that's up there. So it's just kind of a it's a fucking small stager. They cost basically nothing. So yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. It does seem in general from a political perspective, there has been a real sea change in terms of the behavior and activities in the north ever since Horde left. When Horde moved to Geminate, it really has seemed like the Guardians of the Galaxy have been revealed to be a fucking paper tiger. Like, they had the numbers advantage against people harassing them when they could call on Horde to support them, and without Horde, there's just it seems like a complete shit show. I mean, Aerith, have you been paying attention to the situation up north, how it might impact the economy? Do you have anything to say about darkness?
We've been watching it pretty closely. We have graphs that we use to measure other people's economies and things like that, and you can see some of it in the MER. So we've been seeing it in our internal data and be able to quantify it to a fairly high degree. So we've been kind of following along, going, okay, here's going to affect this impact. It's going to have this kind of detrimental effect on our players over the long term. Oh, look, people are blowing up Moongu now. They're hot dropping JFs. That's always fun. So it's very predictable, and it's going to be a question of what is his response? Like, I wonder what he does in the long run when they start shedding people, which you already start to see happening. Because one of the things that we see is when you get this sustained, prolonged kind of oppression campaign, you start shedding corps. At what point does Sword Dragon kind of put his foot down and try to do something special?
We're already seeing the shredding of corpse. This past 2 weeks, CO2 has climbed in corpse. All the corpse that joined after CO2 disbanded the first time are leaving. They're bleeding corpse just from that alone, and they're joining. I mean, it's the same thing that happened when we were up north, and you had groups like SMA and FCON. Eventually, those groups find happy farming grounds. When you have a place that's constantly harassed, like Declan is, you're going to move. MOA has been slowly working on its way towards a fail cascade. You're going to hear this first on the Meta Show. 2 of their major corps have been removed for inactivity and told to go join their academy to prop up the academy. Both those corps have shown 0 activity lately. MOA has tried to do a deployment to E9KD and are struggling to even get enough dudes to form fleets. It's pretty bad, dire situation up there for anyone that's nearby. If you do want to get in on it, looks like even Tri got in on it. Tried to get in on it yesterday. They had a fleet go tackle some oracles and kill some GOTG and then moonwalk out. So it looks like everyone's trying to see the blood in the water and get involved in this. So
one of the curious things, though, is that in the past, before we had this new sort of Sov combined with a new economic system and the Citadels, right? So a few years ago, certainly in the Dominion system, if you had a group of alliances become so weak, and the Galactic Northwest is very weak, and they're dying, and people are fleeing and going to where it's easier and they can make money, somebody would swoop in and take the space, right? There would be an invasion. In the Dominion system, you didn't need to live in the space to take the space, so you would end up with, say, the Imperium would go there and reconquer the North and kick darkness in them out. But now with this system, you need to live in the space and use it. So this is maybe the first time that an entire quadrant of the galaxy has been rendered uninhabitable, and then there's not likely to be an invasion or anything. Like, we're not going to go take the North. There's nobody going to go do that. So it's just going to be weird.
Ooh,
like, is everybody going to flee?
Well, I got news for you. Hold on, this just in. A friend of mine has messaged me on Discord to inform me that the internal leadership of GOTG is infighting. It has begun. And the question of the day is, why is Sort still in charge? He's not active. Why is he still running us? And that has just came to my desk. Unverified, of course, but this guy is usually pretty good about his.
Why is he still in charge?
Why is he still running GOTG when we have other people that can run it like Right Rick?
Probably because Sword Dragon actually can lead people. I mean, for all of his flaws and all of his complaints, Sword Dragon has been a leader in EVE Online for a long time, and he plays the game and he does care, even if he boo-hoo-hoos about how it's a thankless job being an alliance leader.
Oh, sorry, hold on. It's not that why is Sort in charge. It's why is Darkness in charge of the Coalition, considering how small they are getting compared to the much better alliances that are involved in GOTG.
That's a very fair question.
That is a fair question.
That's the one.
That's an extremely fair question, because as you see Darkness degrade, you see entities like Slice or other ones, and you wonder, why don't they decide, hey, why are we listening to you, right? Like, they're all dying, and they're looking to Sword Dragon for protection. That's not coming, so...
Well, you know what we should do? We should do an offer right here. We should be like, first one to betray the others, we say we won't camp you for a year.
Well, no, even better. First one to betray the others has a welcome home in Aquarius to take a constellation or two.
No, you have that. We're leave you alone.
Sorry, I'm bad at this. Real quick, another thing that happened this week, and the stupidity rises with this one, is somebody thought it'd be a good idea to park a Ragnarok in Aquarius next to Horde. And that Ragnarok obviously died immediately. And not much to talk about there. But one thing I want to bring up, last thing here, we're running out of time. We're not going to get to the CCP Please one because I want to go back a second to the MER. And you're talking about how a test couldn't afford a $2 trillion loss. And we had Villy on recently to talk about the PLNC. failed Dread Bomb. And one of the biggest things about that Dread Bomb is, unlike our Dread Bomb in the north, where every single Dread was probably T2 fed. I know my personal one was. I just got a new one. It cost me like 1.8 billion. All of the NC. and PL ones were exorbitantly expensive. You're talking 3-4 trillion or billion, sorry, in fancy faction fitting and stuff like that. How do they mitigate that? You talk Killer B talk about how it was just so bad. There was a lot of internal complaints about that drop. They did not like the way it turned out. NC. complained pretty heavily how bad PL was in that. What happens with that with them? Are they going to continue to throw away Dreads? Is that profitable for them at all?
No, they're not going to continue to do it. They might do it one more time, but I think they're going to be super cautious. They don't have another massive welt for basically nothing now.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest change here is, and we have always, it makes sense to me that PL and NC. Dreads were pimp fit, right? Because for many years, PL and NC. Were able to rely upon casino money to basically have free ISK. So, they never developed a finance team. They never developed an ability to actually figure out ways to earn ISK through the game. They had this crutch. It was like a drug addiction. And so these fleets from the Casino War are still out there, right? Until those ships are lost in combat, that is a boost to PL and NC.'s fleet strength. But certainly seeing, almost 300 Casino War era dreadnoughts go up in flames is it's a good start.
Yeah, our producer Jay Mazes points out they all had T2 guns. T2 guns on Dreads are worth more than the hull if you have 3 of them, which is goddamn ridiculous.
Is pretty funny.
And then another quick caveat. This is a PSA from our friends in the Imperium. Haiwanto from Snuffbox points this out, that if you are not a friend of a guy named Faffer, as we all know, runs the NC. rental program, you will be removed from any and all neutral Freeport Keepstars and Fortizars in space. There was a post this week by Faffer saying that Imperium is no longer welcome, lol, in any of the Keepstars up north because PamFam said so. That was an exact quote from him. So if you do try to dock in any of those Freeports, be advised you are not allowed to. So this is a PSA from our friends in Snuffbox. Not that it's surprising that those Freeport Keepstars that were totally just Freeports, totally not NC.PL places to drop all around EVE to have for hot dropping things, totally Freeports, nothing we mentioned on the Meta Show in the last year.
Just great news for us.
Alrighty.
Our deals. Like, we're the only ones now.
Well, wait, what was that? Eric, you said something.
We're the only ones known for keeping our deals, and this just plays into that.
Yeah, and Crippa did a great job of keeping his deals, but ever since he turned it over to Ghost Legion, it just kind of went out the window. Yeah, I don't even want to go into why it's bad. We had an article on INN about it saying what their purpose is, and it did a great job of pointing out what they used to be. But what they are now is just, look, they belong to NC. And don't try to dock shit there. You're going to lose it.
Alrighty.
Yeah, I think we're
well, that's going to be it. So, just again, as a reminder, guys, thank you all, our subscribers, our cool kids, who I hope you guys enjoy the subscribers-only chat. Next week, again, there will not be a meta show. We're going to be broadcasting the Imperium FC tournament. It'll be the first one of its kind. I'm pretty excited to see how that goes. And, of course, it'll be FanFest weekend, so look for our broadcasting to take place right after the big main FanFest broadcast of the day. So, like, after the keynote is over, we will flick over and start the tournament. And give you guys
I do have a question for you right before we go here. A little prediction. What is going to be announced at FanFest? What do you think? What do you think is going to be the big thing?
I have no idea.
No idea, though? Me either.
I know exactly what's going to be announced, but I can't discuss.
Will it be good? Yep. That's the question. Can you say that?
I can't make a judgment like that.
Damn it! We're trying here.
I think the majority of EVE players will probably think it's good.
Okay, that's all I need to hear. Nothing NDA
That's
from
good
us.
to know.
Good. Okay, man. Well,
all right,
we'll
guys.
see you in
Thanks
a
so
couple
much.
weeks.
Enjoy FanFest and enjoy the tournament.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.
You are about to receive messages that may be harmful to your mental state. Your sense of reality will be questioned. Your view on things will be altered. You are now part of the meta. The meta controls everything. The meta determines what will and will not happen. You are watching The Meta Show.